Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a real privilege and pleasure for me to welcome you all to IVA, the Royal Swedish Academy of Engineering Sciences. And this afternoon, where we will have a seminar and a dinner in the honor of our international fellows. IVA was founded, as many of you know, something like about 100 years ago, as the first Academy of Engineering in the world, which was much needed and very strongly supporting the first wave of industrialization in Sweden. And since the first day, we have been building bridges between research, industry, public sector, and politics. And we like to see technology as something that is at the service of humanity, and also that the development that what we are promoting is intended to increase our competitiveness, but also push forward sustainable development. And so this is also the vision behind today's program, when we discuss how disruptive technologies such as AI will push forward and can provide solutions, focusing on solutions and not providing obstacles for sustainable development, which is the other option. But our challenge is, of course, we are talking about the competitiveness of Sweden, but our challenges are, of course, global. And so must also the solutions be. So the problem is that no matter how carbon neutral we become in Sweden, if the other countries are not doing the same, we will not win the battle. So international collaboration and also science diplomacy, they have been always in the core of IVA's agenda. We had our first international fellows we had in the 1920s already. And now with the digitalization, we have been seeing that we can engage for actually all of you international fellows in our projects and activities much, much better than before. But I'm really happy to welcome all of those of you who have come here to Sweden so that we can meet in real life today. So what once was IVA alone has over the years grown into a global network of engineering academies. And together with our partners, we are contributing to, of course, national technology and innovation strategies and policies, but we are also part of the science advice mechanism of the European Commission. So I like to think that the work that we have been doing for about 100 years and increasingly in international collaboration is also something that has earned the respect of the policymakers, so that they feel that they can trust the kind of science-based advice that we can deliver. So the seminar program today is put together by early and mid-career research and innovation leaders in Swedish organization that are sitting there. And they are participating in this leadership program, which we have been trying to change the name for many times, but it's still called IFG. International, whatever that was, but the three letters are the nominator for this program. What it is, is a kind of a peer learning program where early and mid-career researchers and scientists are kind of helping each other to become even better leaders. And I'm very grateful that you have been working with this program, and we will soon see the results. I'm really looking forward to it. So I will leave now the floor to our moderator, Maria Ranka, who is also an IVA fellow. So you're welcome.
Thank you, Tula. It's great to see so many of you here today. We heard Tula talk about IVA's mission, technology in the service of humanity. That is ultimately what today's seminar is all about. We will, as we heard from Tula, discuss disruptive technologies, not the least AI, and how they affect our lives. If they can help tackle global challenges, or if not, how we should tackle that. It is an absolute delight to welcome our guest of honor and keynote speaker, Dr. Mung Chiang, who since the beginning of this year is the president of Purdue University. He is also, as we heard, a fellow of EVA. His background spans from research and teaching to innovations and entrepreneurship to policy making and tech diplomacy, a concept that we will learn more about today. President Chiang has more than excelled in all these areas, and it's a great pleasure to welcome him up on stage to talk about AI and freedom.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Maria. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And it's always an absolute delight to be here in late October in Stockholm. I have developed a tradition that I cherish so much to enjoy the foliage and the weather here that reminds me of my home state, Indiana, in the United States. And this is my 4th time in Sweden. Each time I'm here, I am reminded that Sweden, on a per capita basis, at least in my own mind, is the most innovative economy in the world. And now, Indiana, on a per capita basis, is the most manufacturing-capable state in America. And I know that because we have worked so closely with Saab and Ericsson in particular, 2 of the many long-standing leaders in technology innovation coming from your kingdom. And we have a Saab site, we have Ericsson collaboration, and for EVA, thank you again for this incredible honor. I am truly privileged to be able to say a few words with you and engage in the dialogue afterwards. Now, Purdue University, which I have the pleasure to serve for the past 6.5 years, except 1 year during which, in 2020, I served as the Science and Technology Advisor to the US Secretary of State. And starting January 1 this year, I've been what they say promoted, but perhaps downgraded away from professorship and deanship to be serving the whole university. I'm delighted to say that Purdue is now among the top 50 US universities, the #1 in what we call STEM student enrollment. Out of 52,000 students on our main campus, more than 2/3 are in the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEM fields, ranking us in the very top in terms of technology student talent. Now, that's not bragging about Purdue, although if you do follow American college basketball, the season starting next week, and we have some amazing players. When I was asked to say a few words about the intersection between technology and diplomacy, this tech diplomacy is something near and dear to my heart. When I was serving my country, the United States of America, I had the pleasure to initiate quite a few tech diplomacy efforts. And I'm so delighted to see that it has become a bipartisan understanding on a nonpartisan topic. If you follow, again, American news cycles, you will notice that there are not that many bipartisan agreements on important issues of the day. But tech diplomacy is one of them. We hosted Secretary Blinken a year ago on my campus, and he actually gave almost the same speech that I gave on his last day as Deputy Secretary from the prior administration. I was almost accused of plagiarism when I gave almost identical speech. I didn't know at that time on my last day after 1 year service to the State Department. It just demonstrates how bipartisan and unified America is on this topic. But to demonstrate tech diplomacy in a concrete setting, I believe AI would be a fitting topic for this year, 2023. Not just because of ChatGPT, although ChatGPT did write my entire speech today, so perhaps one day it will, but I wasn't that lazy. I want to pay the full respect to Eva's kind invitation by writing my own content here. Well, the signal and the noise. As engineers, we think of the signal-noise ratio. Well, I believe there's a lot of noise for sure, but there's real signals this time as well. The noise is that there's no problem unsolvable by AI these days, and there's no mathematics too simple to self-anoint as AI. Sometimes I talk to the high school students, they say, we are working on AI. I say, what kind of AI? See that multiplication? Now, that was also AI's doing. Now, see that multiplication? That is math. That's AI. I say, nah, not every single addition is artificial intelligence. But I'm so glad that it has made mathematics cool again in America. And if you think about the precedent, people say, what about calculator, right? It has changed the way we teach mathematics. We cannot ban calculators. What we do is teach them a different kind of mathematics, not the speed of adding numbers, but the ability to translate real-world problems into mathematical formulation. So let Caesar be Caesar and God be God. Well, let machine do machine's job and human do human's job. Well, we'll later come back to whether there will indeed one day be no more boundary between machines and human. And people also refer to web search when that became available, and Wikipedia and Google. And people say, well, how do we write essays now? Well, you cite the source. You're free to use the sources, but you have to cite it, and perhaps you can improve upon it. Perhaps the professors can give exams and lectures that are higher level of cognition than searching. So perhaps smarter AI can make more interesting human beings. There's hope there. A year ago, my predecessor, Mitch Daniels, a former governor of Indiana and president of Purdue University, invited Gary Kasparov to Purdue campus. I want to tell you something he said that stayed in my head. But we also asked him, well, what do you think about that deep blue thing? He says, well, we don't have to talk about that again. And then there's the Lee versus AlphaGo a few years after that, quite a few. But if this keeps on going, people say, wait a moment, how can humans win? Well, first of all, humans do things to develop our minds, like we still learn how to add numbers. It's just the speed is not the key anymore. Humans do things for fun. We don't outrun machines, we still run. We don't outplay Deep Blue, we still play chess. And to be fair to Kasparov and to Lee, it's not quite as energy efficient. These machines consume 4 to 5 orders of magnitude more energy per second, let alone the time it has ahead of time offline to prepare by watching every single game. So the energy efficiency, as I always say, if you unplug Deep Blue AI and plug it into a little battery source, consuming as much heat and energy as human brain, I'm not sure if they can win today. Now, what we do at Purdue is to recognize that you cannot ban the development of technology. So you try to evolve with it. And that's why we carry out research in physical AI, where the bytes of AI meet the atoms of what we grow, what we make, what we move in digital agriculture, in advanced manufacturing, and in autonomous transportation. We also teach AI not only as a major in computer science, but also as a major in philosophy department. We teach with AI. Our students have a Boilermaker, that's what we call ourselves at Purdue, when we especially play American football. We haven't been playing well this season, but we call ourselves Boilermakers. So students have developed Boiler ChatGPT to customize the way that they can prepare for exams. It challenges our professors to be better teachers and operate with AI for efficiency, ranging from travel vouchers to finance and accounting and so on. Now, what is interesting is the limits and limitations of AI. I want to come back to tech diplomacy in just a minute and the guardrails for the free world in the age of AI. But let me first talk a bit about limits and limitations. There are questions but no answers. I'd love to have conversation with you over dinner and listen to your answers. Well, first, people ask, can AI one day make AI and stop AI? Okay. Can AI laugh and cry and dream? Can AI self-contradict? As Walt Whitman, the American poet, once said, that I am large, I contain multitude. Can AI be self-aware? I think, therefore I am. We are self-aware. Can machines be self-aware? And can AI suffer? Another American poet, T.S. Eliot, famously wrote, infinitely suffering, infinitely gentle things. Well, will machines with AI, sensors on the one hand and robotics on the other hand, the entirety also be infinitely suffering and infinitely gentle? And is there just one AI or are there many AIs? Is it singular or plural form? When does it start and when does it end? And if a life does not end without death, then what is living? Well, people say it's going to take more than just compounding silicon chips and exploding data to a black box algorithm. It's going to take non-von Neumann architecture to get to the point of answering these questions. Right now, AI is really good at following rules, not breaking rules, good at synthesizing patterns, not creating patterns. But one day, as one colleague challenged me, that eventually, give enough time, these electrical chemical reactions will get to the point where the answer to all your questions, Mung, will be yes, 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 yes. And at that point, whether that's in our lifetime or not, then where is still the boundary between machines and human? But I'm afraid we as humanity, we as the free world, may not have the luxury to wait until the non-von Neumann architecture to evolve to the point of AI blurring with humanity. I'm afraid we have collectively in the free world, as they say, if we don't hang together, we're going to hang separately. I'm afraid that the gravity, necessity, and the urgency is now dawned upon us, something burning. And that's my worst nightmare today. And the gravest, most urgent nightmare is 1984 getting irrevocably locked in by AI's aiding and abetting authoritarian regimes. 75 years ago, 1948, it's the year that George Orwell published, 1984. It's been 3/4 of a century of this surveillance state with so much power from technology that it's impossible for dissent and debate to be revitalized again. We always say on Purdue campus, while we are a leading engineering entity, we're top 4 in America in engineering college, and we have as many students in engineering as the top 3, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley combined. So it's a very engineering-focused, excellent university, excellence at scale. But we encourage free speech and open debate. We encourage dissent. But as a country, if dissent is suppressed and activities surveilled 24/7, then how could individual citizens regain their freedom? So, ladies and gentlemen, my worry is that once authoritarian regimes, through kinetic warfare or digital ones, take over the vast swath of the free world, and there can be no island of liberty in the ocean of tyranny. Eventually, in this barbarity versus civilization's final battle, if we were to lose, then there will never be victory again, because technologies such as AI will lock in 1984. We need guardrails, starting with ourselves, perhaps. I'm a believer that government entities, perhaps their access to data and their power to arbitrate algorithms and declare which are good, which are bad, is perhaps a bigger concern in my mind than not having enough regulation. They are not known, I don't know about your government, my government is not known for efficiency and understanding of nuances of technologies, fast-moving object. Now, we need to scrutinize the dependence of output on input. Right? It's not just garbage in, garbage out. You will see that indeed, machines tend to positive feedback loop reinforce what's already out there, and thereby algorithmically making the diversity of opinions even harder to surface. We need to preserve dissent even when it's inefficient. In particular, we need competing AI systems from entrepreneurs, perhaps right here from Sweden, and methodologies to break big data. Now, data to AI is like oil to modern economy. It's like critical rare earth mineral to EV battery and silicon chips. It's all about where you collect data, store data, and use data. And here is a proposed framework that is light touch regulation, perhaps, but defines a boundary. I call it the MOTA. Sounds like a type of espresso. It takes a lot of time to come up with pronounceable acronyms in English. Now, M for minimalism, O for optionality, T for transparency, and A for appeal. Let me briefly spend half a minute on each. M for minimalism, meaning that whoever, government, large companies, small startups, anytime you collect data, collect only the minimum needed for the specified task at hand. For example, if I were to know, should I serve you alcohol or not, all I need to know is your binary answer to, are you above 21 or not? That's, in my country, understand here, it is more humane treatment of teenagers. It's 18 years old. I only need to know the binary answer, yes or no. I do not know your actual age. Certainly, I don't need to know your birthday. O for optionality. That's the flip side of minimalism. This says, to the maximum degree possible, give the users a chance to opt out. T is for transparency. Even when you cannot give people the chance to opt out, at least be transparent in telling them when, where, how you store, use, and save the data. A for appeal. This perhaps is the foundation of everything else. When an individual citizen believes that her minimalism, optionality, or transparency has been violated by the government or a company, she can litigate and sue. With independent judiciary under rule of law, not ruled by law, not the judiciary system dictated by the executive branch, but independent judiciary system. Now back to that Garry Kasparov speech. Tragically, he gave a humorous comment. He said, in Russia today, people say, oh, we also have freedom of speech. I say, oh yeah, you do? Yes, we do. We just don't have freedom after speech. The litmus test, I believe, is what they call public square test on freedom of speech. You go to the public square, not on a taxi, not in your closet, not in the bathroom while flushing the toilet and whispering. You go to the public square in front of the White House or in front of your beautiful public squares. There are many along the river banks. And you say, this current government should go, and see what happens to you. If you are disappeared within 5 minutes, well, you know this system failed at the litmus test. If people cheer you on, say, yeah, you are exactly right, and then ignore you and walk back to where they were, and you go home to have dinner, then, well, it passed the litmus test. So I have a litmus test for the use of AI in appeal, and that is, how many times has a single citizen succeeded in suing the government for violating the AI rights and big companies for violating the rights? How many times has a small company succeeded in suing large companies and the government? If the answer is 0, well, you know that there is no A in MOTA there. What's my point now? My point is that technology must advance freedom, must advance individual liberty. And the gravest danger we live in this grim world for the free world is to preserve that tenet. There should be more options, not more homogeneity in our own society with AI. There should be always doubt, debate, and dissent on our campuses, no matter how painful the conversation might be. There should always remain that freedom to choose, and hopefully, through that, one day, we can proudly say we still preserved free will of human beings. With the rise of machines alongside the rise of authoritarian regimes. So here's my departing thought. Imagine a digital dome of self-defense for liberal democracies and the free world. We should think more about protecting our homeland freedom by ensuring there's no intrusion of Trojan horses and there's no export of data. Again, data being the oil to modern economy equivalent to AI. There's no export by design or by accident outside of the digital dome. The digital dome will be defined by the MOTA, and you know which regimes have MOTA and which don't. Spend more time constructing policies to enable this digital dome of self-defense in the age of AI, and less time, perhaps, quibbling with each other, say, between EU and US, on tomato-tomato debate, potato-potato debate. There is much wisdom and benefits of those debates. I deny those not. But we don't live in a world of luxury anymore. Since February 2022, since October 2023, the very same month we still live in right now, there's been 2 strikes. If there were one more third or fourth strike in the Indo-Pacific next year, then we are effectively at the conventional warfare stage of World War III. If the free world countries still focus the energy on potato versus potato, I say, shall we hang together before we all hang separately? Shall we save those wonderful debates to the future date when we are free from freedom under siege? Let's make sure for our children and grandchildren that they will enjoy the same freedom, including digital freedom, as we do today, by ensuring that 1984 shall never be locked in. That, I believe, it is the central thesis and the burning challenge we must face and achieve victory in today's tech diplomacy. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maria.
Thanks a lot for a very thought-provoking speech. Dr. Chiang will be back later on and joining the panel. But before that, I would like to invite one by one a very powerful, stellar panel full of human intelligence up on stage. And our first panelist is Aurore Belfrage. And in my view, she's the incarnation of a tech diplomat. She's an investor, primarily in energy and climate these days, but she has been a real techie over the years, previously with EQT. She has a great personal interest and knowledge about the Middle East. She's also a co-author of a book called Climate and the New World Order. So I would like to welcome Aurore Belfrage up on stage. Thank you. Before introducing our fellow panelists, I would like to give you the chance to just briefly reflect on what you have just heard and how you see the world right now.
Well, there's absolutely no possibility to briefly reflect on that bombshell of reflection. So thank you very much for thought-provoking, and I very much agree with the threats as well as the possibilities of the era of artificial intelligence. I would like to add a strand of thought as an additional piece, which potentially could be positive, but potentially would just add to the doom and gloom, which is, as a climate investor, I see that the backdrop is that we're in a twin transition. The digitalization, artificial intelligence, as well as quantum computing, which will flip everything on its end again, as well as the climate and the green transition. And I would personally argue that the worry of climate collapse and biosphere collapse is adding an additional timeline to the pressures that we just heard from our keynote speaker. And I think there's where I'd like to add a little glimmer of hope that the power of artificial intelligence, if used wisely, as we set our planetary boundaries, could be a very powerful tool in understanding our energy usage, our minerals in agriculture, how we refit our buildings, etc. All those elements that are spewing out emissions and killing the climate. So I have hope that AI can be a powerful tool there. So I will leave it with that.
Thank you, Aurore. Our next speaker is the former Prime Minister, or panelist, is the former Prime Minister of Sweden, foreign minister, and a lot of other distinguished titles, but we will not take up the time with that. So please welcome Carl Bildt to the stage. So Carl, you left office as foreign minister 9 years ago in 2014, right? Mm-hmm. And back then, was tech diplomacy something you thought a lot about?
We did, quite a lot in the years that had preceded that. Yes, absolutely. Sweden was, as a matter of fact, together with the US to a certain extent, in the forefront of tech diplomacy. We set up a couple of organizations that were primarily concerned with what was then the sort of internet freedom agenda, but a couple of other things when it came to control of the technology. I subsequently, after I had left office, I was chairing a global commission on internet governance, because we had a fairly vigorous global debate/dispute over both the principle for the governance of the internet and essentially also who's going to be openly or behind the doors in control of the internet. And I think that particular commission was instrumental in diffusing some of the tension that we have over that particular issue. We have subsequently, I think, entered a new phases of this global tech diplomacy. We find that virtually every ministry in the world, Ministry for Foreign Affairs, I would say, now has a tech ambassador or digital ambassador. Even the Swedish one nowadays, again, has one. State Department in the US has not only an ambassador, they have sort of a huge number of people who are doing these things. And that is necessary as we now enter, as was pointed out, I mean, we have AI, we will have quantum, we have synthetic biology. We are in a race for mastering the new technologies, governing the new technologies. You could say controlling the new technologies, because it's essentially a question who's going to be in the lead when it comes to all of these transitions, be they green or be that digital or be that somewhere else that are going on. So it's very much up in the forefront of things. One reflection just on the speech. So technology should advance freedom. I think you started with that. That's a good one. I like it. And I think so far, massively been the case, if we look at it historically. Is there any sort of fundamental reason to think that this will change? There is the fear, the 1984. I sort of think I wouldn't be too worried, in the sense that we've seen these things before, but we've seen them switching around, and there's also been counter tendencies. So I do think, but it requires a governance framework, it requires an awareness of the risks, it requires sort of frameworks of global cooperation, but if those are in place, I think there's every reason to believe that technology now could massively advance freedom.
But there's a level of importance of doing the doomsday chess game that we just heard, which creates a bit of fear that allows then politicians to take harsh decisions which might be counterintuitive and political suicide, as opposed to if you...
Suicide was slightly unnecessary, but anyhow, but
there's
politically difficult.
Politically difficult.
But Carl, there are a lot of unnecessary things going on in policy making, so yeah.
Well, yeah.
As we also heard Dr. Chiang say. So before we go on with the discussion, I would like to welcome another panelist up on stage, and we will be joined by Erik Ekudden, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Ericsson. And Erik is, of course, working very hands-on with these technologies, and I also thought it would be interesting for us to have you as a representative of a global company on this panel. You are not only doing business across the globe, but you are also actually, hopefully, using technology to advance freedom and help countries become more prosperous. So beyond 5G, and with these sort of technological shifts that are going on, and we heard Aurora talk about a few other ones as well, you know, what could we expect from the future?
Okay, I think that's a good question, Maria. It's and you touched upon our core area, which is of course 5G, and a few years from now is going to be an upgrade to 6G. But it also very much connects to the AI discussion, because these systems, of course, are powered by AI and automation. It's part of how you build. Also the digital infrastructure, it's very much about 5G, but it's equally much about AI and automation. And what we see now is, of course, that today's system, they don't only serve consumers. We already see how these technologies are helping enterprises to digitalize, bringing down costs. It's manufacturing, it's the transportation. You have all the sectors, but it's also, to Aurora's comment about sustainability, it's very much to replace physical with digital. So around 15, maybe 20% of the global CO2 emissions will actually be possible to reduce just by digital technologies. And I think that's because we have the technology that is energy efficient, that can serve these needs, but it's also because we combine the data part with the connectivity part. So automation and the use of data responsibly with ethical AI actually allows a big part of the savings or the reductions we need to do on the CO2 side as well. But since you asked also about the future, maybe just a few things from areas that are not just AI, but they're adjacent to AI. And that's, if you look maybe 5-10 years into the future, it's no question that we see advancements on connectivity, we see advancements on compute with advanced accelerators, we see fantastic advancements on the AI, but all of that is powering the consumers, the enterprises, and increasingly it's about a whole society, building things like digital twins of society. And I think that can help us also to battle some of the risks, and you were into them, Carl, that technology innovation is fundamentally a force for good that will give us all these gains. But we need certain oversight, we need certain transparency to be able to do that. And when we build systems that are also digital in nature, you have the digital twin of processes of manufacturing sites, ultimately of the whole world, it allows us also to experiment and see what could go wrong. We could fast forward and make scenarios for the future and see what will happen. We can go back and do root cause analysis, because that inbuilt AI in the fabric of the digital foundation will allow us to also create more, I would say, buy-in from society at large. Because I firmly believe that although we see great things happening with the technology to power augmented reality, AI-based bots that help us with everything in life, is very much creating buy-in for this change in society. So transparency, ability to experiment, and also, as I said, create buy-in by the education. I think it's fantastically important. So it is a combined journey of building the technology, super fast speed. It's very much about international collaboration. We need the scale of what we are doing. We need things to interoperate. We need things to work. But at the same time, we need to be aware of the risks. We need to have guardrails, lightweight guardrails. We believe it's a right way forward, but it's also about this sort of coming together with the transparency part.
And Erik, and maybe this is for all of you, how do we strike the right balance between innovation and using technology to advance freedom and prosperity versus regulation? Because there is, of course, or maybe a trade-off between the two.
Yeah, I can start, but I think this is the tricky one, because I have to say that the risks of over-regulating early on, clamping down by perhaps political good intent, but also a lack of understanding of the consequences, or perhaps regulating technology instead of the usage or the outcome. That is where the risks are. If you clamp down too early, the only thing that happens is that innovation goes somewhere else, and perhaps less controlled, perhaps somewhere where we don't see what happens. But it's also about, I think, companies and universities, research institute, being transparent about which principles they follow. So I think by aligning to, for example, ethical AI principle, the guardrails that everyone can subscribe to, and then follow them through, I think we find the right balance. Over time, that could be encoded into lightweight regulation. But the opposite, starting with a regulation, I think is a big mistake.
Aurore.
Well, I interpret the freedom part of the question slightly differently, in the sense that I feel that the climate collapse is actually the challenge that we're facing. And in that sense, one of the tendencies that I've seen, both for the research for my book, but is that we have now a positive arms race, which is we are building the next chapter of humanity that by definition needs to be fossil-free. And the great powers of the world are now competing to own the next chapter of humanity, the next energy sources, the next infrastructure, the next products, because there's huge wealth that will be created, jobs that will be created. And here, again, I think light governance and support and investment in infrastructure and innovation, allowing different parts of the globe to compete for to win. And AI plays a crucial part in this, because it obviously catalyzes our understanding of how to store energy or create new crops for a new physical reality. So these things are intertwined, and I think the market forces here are creating a more powerful competition, and therefore a movement in the right direction, than us as a planet uniting together to lower our emissions. I see that as being bureaucratically and a bit slow. I see competition here being a very forceful driver. And AI, obviously. You didn't nod all the time, Carl. Did you?
No, but
it's up to you now too.
Most of the time I did, yes. No, this innovation regulation balance is, of course, a tricky one. And the regulation, there's the global politics in that as well. I think on the internet, as I alluded to, I think we, after some turmoil, got it roughly right. With something called the multi-stakeholder approach, with somewhat different levels and somewhat nuances in the different parts of the world. But the fact that you haven't heard major political turmoil around that particular issue for a couple of years indicates it sort of works. Might not be perfect, but it sort of works. Now the global debate is what do you do with AI? And we see the EU AI Act is now in the final process. The Americans, somewhat more light touch, as you would expect, with sort of agreements with primarily the big actors on sort of responsible behavior of different sorts. The Chinese are actually up front with some of the principles and some of the regulations. There might be sort of reasons that we don't necessarily share for them being up front. But this is, and the UN is about to appoint a high-level panel to look at these particular things. There are different ideas. Some want to create a global agency along the lines of the one that was set up for atomic energy, which didn't evolve as we thought, but has been immensely useful in ways that we didn't think of when it was set up. Others are saying let's up something modeled on the IPCC, the intergovernment, the climate panel, whatever the international, whatever.
IPCC.
Yeah, IPCC, but I don't know what it stands for. What does it stand for? IPCC, anyhow, which is sort of more multi-stakeholder approach. And I think the debate is going to lead more in that particular direction, also because of the fact that here we have really a situation where it's the private sector that is driving things. Not only the private sector in general terms, but fairly few actors. I mean, if you see the ones that are really pouring immense amounts of money into this at the moment, it is Microsoft, it is Google, it is Amazon, and a couple of others, but that's the end of it. And since they are driving much of this, they are also to some extent screaming for an element of principles, an element of regulations, and they're also saying we need to do it globally, because if we don't do it globally, then it's going to be difficult. So we are at the beginning of an extremely important debate.
I would like to continue, but before that, Mung Chiang, if you would like to join us up here on stage, because I also want to open up for a few questions towards the end of the seminar. And if you have questions, please use the microphones before you ask them. Welcome back on stage.
Long time no see.
Do you have any reflections after having listened to the panel? They seem to be slightly more optimistic than you are.
Well, somebody got to lift the spirits up before dinner. My spirit has been lifted upward quite a bit by listening to the three distinguished panelists spanning from leaders of nation to tech diplomat to leaders in the tech sector. And Eric and I have known each other for many years as well. Great to be standing next to you in your home country here. Well, just very briefly, indeed, I think that there is hope that AI can do many good things, including climate. And indeed, human civilization, the free world, has survived threats, large and small, in the decades and centuries past. I am sort of a paranoid type. Intel CEO Andy Grove had a book called "Only the Paranoid Survives."
It's a good one.
So I always feel like you can over-prepare and be under-surprised. I do have one point to make, perhaps, and that is, had I been making this presentation with the honor of your invitation 2 years ago, I would not have been doom and gloom as I am today. Like it or not, wars have a wicked way to compress time and reset history. And elsewhere, one spot not far from where we stand at this moment, people are paying the price with their lives en masse in that history resetting and time compression. So we do have to recognize that there are now 2 strikes And if there were to be more strikes, then the notion that freedom is under siege and technology in the diplomatic world, nation to nation, may have to take on a new sense of gravity and urgency.
We have a question over there. You have a microphone on the side of your chair, Alice. And you probably have to press the button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a little surprised at Carl's amazing optimism. Maybe that's how you solved all the world's problems back when. You know, in worrying about our dinner, let's really be serious. I think the president is on the right track, because it's not just the war. I mean, we have, you know, social media has completely disrupted our conversations in the United States and in most of Europe. We have autocracies advancing over lies that are being propagated by our technologies. We don't have any way to deal with it. Yes, we only have a few companies that are controlling all of that space and fighting regulation as hard as they can. We have Elon Musk, a completely crazy individual who's taken over Twitter, which is now X. And we have, you know, the same kinds of problems that we didn't pay attention to for the last 100 years, which is children being abused in incredible amounts through technology now, making it much worse, and the climate that Aurora brings up, which has become clearly a disaster this year. So where is technology in all of this? I just want to stick with the president on that.
Well, now there are at least two paranoids in it.
Carl, do you want to comment? Are you overly optimistic, given?
No. I want to comment. I mean, first the social media aspect of it. I mean, or to be not entirely, not too unfair, but the U.S. is a very special place. I mean, I'm not saying anything.
Are you a diplomat?
No, but I mean, we know each other, so I know that I preach to the converted in this particular case. I was very surprised. I'm on the board of something called the RAND Corporation in the US, and we do quite a lot of things for also US government and security, whatever. And they have an immense amount of money, so they put all sorts of strange questions that you think they have the answer to already. They were worried about these conspiracy theories. So RAND was asked to find out, do people believe in this? And the answer, rather shocking, was that if you take any one of them, but there are those that are exceedingly crazy, completely bizarre, and just slightly strange. None of them has majority support. But 50% of all Americans believe in at least one of them. That's rather shocking. 50% of Americans believe in one conspiracy theory, which most of us here would consider totally bloody nutty. Is that the case in Europe? I don't think so, am I? Then I'm going to say something that slightly to the contrary of what I have said, social media. I was in politics for a long time. And in politics, which I highly recommend, you do things that are called election campaigns. And election campaigns, you really go out there and meet people everywhere that you don't normally meet. And what we now see on social media, I can tell you they were there before, but you didn't see them. It's not that we have invented nutcases by digital technology. We have discovered the nutcases. You could say we have given them a platform. We have. And then it's a question to make certain that we have a platform for countering the nutcases, as we did in the, to take a German expression, Stammtisch. I don't know how many know German. There's an expression called Stammtisch, and that is the round table in the local bar, where normally the men sits down in the evening and say how things are in society according to their opinion. It was probably bizarre at the Stammtisch but it was countered by others at the Stammtisch in those days. We need to be much better at sort of educating, getting information out there, countering the nuts. But we can't get rid of the nuts by closing down social media, because they're still there. And we might not, we perhaps shouldn't give them that much of platform. Then, of course, Professor, because you go to the fact that we are 2 wars at the moment. Yeah. But those we can't blame on technology. They're grounded as sort of political and social and ideological issues that we haven't sorted out. And sometimes even in this particular, the Gaza and the horrors that we've seen there, the belief that with technology you know everything. You know everything in advance. Everything can be seen, everything can be surveyed. There are no surprises left. Turned out there are surprises left. So the sort of the surveillance society, even when you try hard, and in this particular case they did try hard, didn't really work. And that's an important lesson. Negative, but also take another sort of thing that happened in terms of the limitations of technologies. You saw what happened in China. China is fairly well surveyed from the technological point of view. They had, it was at the beginning of the year, they had this zero COVID policy, as you know. Everything was closed down. I mean, they were fairly good at COVID in the beginning with their restrictions. Then they went overboard with the zero COVID policy. Then happened this particular fire at a high-rise building in Urumqi. And people died, and they blamed it on the fact that zero COVID meant that the rescue service couldn't come in time. You would expect that the Chinese authorities would be able to suppress that news fairly fast, and they did try. But within 48 hours, we had demonstrations across the cities of China, spontaneous demonstrations, challenging the Communist Party. And what happened 2 weeks later is that the Chinese Communist Party, in an act of desperation, lifted the entire zero COVID and went from one stupid policy to, in this particular case, another stupid policy, because, I mean, you don't go from one extreme to another. And that showed that even the surveillance society in extremely surveilled places doesn't really work 100%. Good or bad?
Aurore, you raised your hand.
No, I just wanted to build on the question, and thank you for those reflections as well. And in the nutcase scenario that you were referring to, there are many thinkers that are talking about our ability to free will. You talked about, is AI conscious? The historian Yuval Noah Harari talks about, are we conscious? Are we maybe biological algorithms that are relatively easy to manipulate? I know how to create fear. I know how to create trust. I know how to make you laugh. And knowing that on an aggregated level might create more nutcases if you use AI in a sophisticated way. So I'd say that AI might augment the amount of nutcases just by us being emotional beings. But I would like to end on a positive note on the question, because as an investor, I'm very excited. There's a lot of artificial intelligence and other types of technology that are now being used and deployed in our fight for climate and net zero. And it's the amount of teams and brains that are working at this, raising capital, generating impact as well as financial bottom line is very positive and exciting, both in buildings, agriculture, as I mentioned, energy. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Unfortunately, we're about to run out of time, but I will let Erik in before Dr. Chiang wraps it up. Didn't you raise your hand?
No.
Ah, sorry, you were just moving around. Sorry. Then I'll have a really quick question before we wrap it up. Sorry.
I'm trying, yes. Good afternoon. My name is Lina Bertling-Tjernberg. I'm a professor in power grid technology, and I'm also a fellow in IMA. So I just would like to say thank you for this introduction speech. I have the privilege to meet you in Purdue last year. I'm not sure if you remember. I was there with a delegation from KTH. And I just want to say that this is not paranoia. that we talk about. It's reality. I think we had quite a long time now, for a couple of years, when we were happy. You know, I'm very happy about your enthusiasm, but I'm sorry to say, this is reality that you're telling, and I'm really appreciating it. I have a lot of international students with me. That's our work. One of my students is from Taiwan. She's going home, and I'm worried, you know. And I think this is reality. We don't want to, sometimes the reality is so sad, so we don't want to see it, but it is reality. So I really appreciated it, and it's not paranoia, it's reality. And it's very sad, but we should continue. I mean, what I tell my students and try to say, what can we do? You know, what can we do? Well, we can continue. We can continue. My job is to educate people. I continue with that. But reality is sad. Sorry.
I think that is a very, very good question. What can we do? And maybe we will continue with that question at the mingle and later on tonight. But I would like to ask you that question now, Dr. Chiang. What would you do if you were to decide?
3 + 1 thoughts. 1, more independent commercial entities driving the future of all emerging critical technologies, as the title indicates, including AI. We believe in free market entrepreneurial competition. 2 is less bickering from within the liberal democracies, EU and US, save more time and energy with the proper prioritization. And 3, more vigilance as to where the data goes. +1, perhaps the most fundamental, and I hope this gives us a uplifting hope, is the human spirit, that free human beings can never return to be enslaved again, whether it's 1984, whether it's AI, whether it's any technologies. If you look at how the Ukrainians are able to surprise everybody, perhaps not themselves, perhaps they've been underestimated, but they have demonstrated with clarity that there's no technology that can suppress the human spirit of freedom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
On that note, I would like to invite you all to stay and talk, ask more questions. Dr. Chiang will be here for sure. I hope the rest of the speakers will be here as well. So the discussions will go on, but the seminar is over. Thank you. And Erik, you have a few words to say now, or are you?
Well, I think as you said, Maria, this is continuing, and the mingle starts right away upstairs, so please join us or come along up there, unless there's more discussions here. I think this clearly is a topic worth discussing. So thanks for attending, all of you.
Tack.